So about 2 months ago, the WCA made the shocking decision to remove this clock puzzle, which is one of the 17 events that they do at competitions. And in turn, they will be adding the face-turning octahedron as the first event added since 2014 with Skewb, and the last event removed since 2019 with Feet. Now, this intro isn't going to be very long because I'm sure all of y'all have heard. I mean, if you haven't, you've been living under a clock in it because, yeah. Now, the thumbnail might suggest that I'm going to be talking about FTO, but I don't know how to solve it, so I can't really talk about it too much. And the main debate has really been, was removing clock the right decision? So if you don't follow competitions, you might not know what this is. This is the Rubik's clock. It was created by the Rubik's brand company and not by Erno himself. So I don't know why they added it in the first place. But how it works is whenever you have one of these pins up, you can turn that respective dial and it moves all of them around. And then it moves just the corner. So the basic idea is you're trying to get all of these to the top. So you might think, well, actually, you can just turn the corners independently. So you just solve the edges in the center, and then it's easy. But the only thing is, there's another side. So it looks really complicated, but watching a quick tutorial for about 5 nanoseconds, you can easily figure out how to solve this, and it's fairly boring to solve. So the most common method for solving this is called the beginner's method. What you do is you solve this center clock and match it with all 4 of these edges. And then once you do that, you bring them to the top, and then you flip the clock over, do the same thing on the other side, and then do a very simple method for solving the corners. This solving method has 0 algorithms, and there's not much inspection depth that you can do. Now, the more advanced method that you find in advanced clock solvers is called 7-Simul, which was developed and popularized by Tommy Chong. The method involves memorizing a sequence of numbers and letters and then turning them into moves similar to blindfolded solving. The problem is that there's not much thinking other than just memorizing where pieces need to go. And all top competitors basically do the same solution, making it similar to puzzles like Magic. And watching a 7-Simul example solve is very confusing if you don't know how the method works. In my opinion, clock is the most underwhelming WCA event, but that doesn't mean that the people who are world class at it aren't skilled. As with anything, being skilled at something means a lot of practice and a lot of dedication, and the world class solvers, they do put a lot of work in to perfecting their method. But I do believe that some events, such as clock, 7x7, and 5-blind, if they weren't events, I definitely wouldn't add them. How exciting an event is completely subjective and can vary through multiple people. So why do some people justify this event being removed? The simple answer is that it's very problematic to run in a competition. Although it's a pretty quick event to solve, it can be very hard to scramble and judge. It's hard to explain why it's hard to scramble, but just try to scramble it with your own clock, and it tends to be very difficult. And while scramblers check scrambles, it may be very difficult to find inaccuracies, and many clock groups are very large, upwards of 25 people, with only 3 or 4 scramblers. And up until just recently, one of the biggest problems was that sometimes whenever you were taking it out of one of the custom cube covers, which are very hard to find and are 3D printed, the clock would fall over, thus causing a pin to move. And you weren't allowed to change the pins during inspection, so the cube had to be brought back to the scrambling station and then re-scrambled. It was fixed by a new regulation that allowed us to do pin moves during inspection. And the real reason why it was removed was due to an incident during Worlds 2025 when 2 of the podium placers, they ended up getting disqualified due to their blocks being mis-scrambled, supposedly during transportation of the cubes. Most people claim that it happened while the cube was being set down, but you will find that it's very, very hard to do that with the clock. I was just talking about world-class solvers, but what happens to beginner solvers at local competitions? Clock is by far the easiest puzzle to learn how to solve in the WCA, so it allows new competitors to sign up for competitions and get to feel like what a competition is like. Although this is great, it has some many problems due to spectators not being able to see if the clock is solved, and the judge having to flip it over, thus the spectators having to rely personally on the competitors' reactions. And along with the spectators, the competitor cannot see if the clock is solved because it may be unsolved on the other side. This means that the clock is a very important part of WCA competitions and can change the amount of competitors in the community and at any given competition. Although removing an event does nothing good for the community, it can be important for certain compromises in order to keep competitions running smoothly. Like feet back in 2019, mats and timers need to be cleaned in order to keep sanitary precautions. What I think could have happened with clock is the WCA could have introduced tiered events where a certain amount of second tier events were allowed at competitions in order to keep competitions running smoothly, and perhaps holding second tier events during lunch to prevent any holdup and giving some of the hardworking delegates any more work than they need. From a competitor that might like clock, this is devastating news. But from the WCA's perspective and a lot of other perspectives, such as organizing and running a competition, this is overall the right decision. Out of all the WCA events, clock is the one event that fits into a lot of the criteria that makes an event unenjoyable, such as spectator friendliness, solving experience, and just running the event in general. I believe that 17 events is already a lot. I think just adding FTO would, as a relatively long event, would not be the best idea. So I believe from many standpoints, removing clock is a logically good decision. The timing, however, was not very convenient, as Moyu just released their first ever clock, and the hardware has been getting better with many new advancements in methods and just cube design. This was likely due to the evolving pressure that the WCA had due to the World's 2025 controversy. And it felt like everyday incidents just kept piling and piling up. Although it made many people very, very unhappy, I think it was logically the right decision, and it was a decision that's sad, but it definitely needed to be made. So with that being said, sponsors, please sponsor me. I'm looking for a sponsorship. I think that I'm very different from other cubing channels. I talk about go in depth to many different topics that better the community. So thank you. If you want to sponsor me, please do that.